Hello everyone, my name is Chaewoon Oh. I'm a principal researcher at Green Technology Center Korea. It's an honor to be here, and I'm really happy to have an opportunity to share with you the result of my research on Korea's gender mainstreaming strategies for climate technology cooperation based on the analysis of gender mainstreaming efforts under the UNFCCC. My presentation is divided into 6 parts, starting with the notion of gender mainstreaming, which is followed by research background, research question, research methodology, and analysis result. And then I will conclude my presentation with some policy implications. So what is gender mainstreaming? This notion of gender mainstreaming was well implicated in the previous presentations, but I'd like to elaborate this term a little bit more specifically here. As you can see in the slide, gender mainstreaming is a strategic process toward the goal of gender equality. If gender equality is indicative of normative and common values for men and women to share the rights and privileges of socially available resources, opportunities, and compensations equally, gender mainstreaming refers to the process of assessing the implications for women and men of any planned action at all levels and in all areas. In a nutshell, strategic process. So, in a nutshell, gender mainstreaming is a strategic process that is applied in the design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of policies and programs to accomplish the goal of gender equality. And this notion of gender mainstreaming is a really highly salient issue under the UNFCCC. Parties and the constituted bodies under the UNFCCC are mandated to take gender-responsive approaches at policy, program, and strategy levels. Particularly, technology-related constituted bodies of the CTCN and GCF made remarkable progress in their gender mainstreaming efforts. However, in Korea at the national level, gender mainstreaming is not a salient issue. Even though the Korean NDE, which is the Ministry of Science and ICT, is in great interaction with the CTCN and the GCF, Korean practices for global technology cooperation have not reflected much gender elements. And if we look at the Korean national strategies for global technology cooperation, under which Korean practices are grounded, gender elements are not very much incorporated. So with this background, this year, Korean government is planning to renew its existing 2030 Global Climate Technology Cooperation Strategy. So it's a very opportune time for us to incorporate gender elements in the renewed strategy. And here arises a very basic question of what gender elements should be included in the renewed strategy and how should they be reflected. And this basic research question can be transformed into very specific research questions if we consider the context of international practices of gender mainstreaming efforts made by the CTCN and the GCF, and Korea's preparation to renew its strategy for support in the project cycle. And the specified research questions are, first, how do the CTCN and the GCF mainstream gender perspective, particularly in each stage of their technology support cycle? Second, are the CTCN and the GCF gender mainstreaming efforts appropriate? And third, what policy implications can we draw out from this analytical result? And in order to explore these research questions, we come to realize that we need to have an analytical framework with an overall gender element. However, there's no analytical framework that best suits the analysis of the CTCN and the GCF gender mainstreaming strategies. So we decided to take 3 steps to build an analytical framework. So first, we try to find gender elements generally applied to official development aid projects. So we try to review many literatures, and we selected one literature that is regarded as having a comprehensive analytical framework with gender elements. And then we classify the stages of ODA project cycle into 5. Combine these two steps, we formulated the analytical framework, as you can see in the slide. And this analytical framework has 5 stages of project identification, preparation, approval, implementation, and completion and evaluation. Each stage has gender elements. I will not go over these specifically, but if we look at the stage of identification, for example, it has gender elements of gender equality goal setting, the identification of project needs in a gender responsive manner, and the identification of project process that includes information acquisition on gender relations. So with this analytical framework, we went through an analysis on the cases of the CTCN and the GCF. So if we look at the case of the CTCN, we found that the gender elements that are in the analytical framework are well reflected in each stage of the CTCN's project cycle. However, there are 2 points to be concerned. One point to be concerned regards the stage of identification, where gender analysis should be undertaken. At this stage, gender analysis is the most important factor. However, the CTCN does not provide financial resources. That means there is a limitation in the availability of resources and experts for gender analysis in developing countries. So gender-related assistance needs to be provided to the proponents of developing countries at this stage. The other point regards the stage of implementation, where the project implementers are supposed to closely cooperate with the local women groups by organizing and managing capacity building activities in gender-sensitive and responsive manner. So it is very important for the project implementer to have the capacity to do this task. But we are not sure exactly whether the current CTCN guidelines alone can lead to project leaders' behavioral changes to enhance their capacities and to do this task. And I will move on to the case of the GCF. We also found that the GCF also well reflected gender elements in the analytical framework in each stage of its project cycle. However, there are some points as well to be concerned. If we look at the first stage of identification, preparation, approval, an important actor is an accreditation entity, which is an entity that is allowed to access the financial resources of the GCF. And this accreditation entity is supposed to submit a project proposal. And this project proposal should include 3 components of gender analysis, gender assessment, and gender action plan. This means this stage requires a considerable level of gender-related expertise of the accreditation entity. So heavy burden is laid on the accreditation entity. However, if we move on to the next stage, which is also very important, that is the implementation. Not only accreditation entity, but also project implementers are important actors. So in order to fully effectuate the result of 3 elements made in the first stage, it is very important for the accreditation entity and project implementers to have an intricate interaction. These analytical results lead us to the final conclusion. So the result of analysis demonstrate that gender elements considered by both the CTCN and the GCF in each stage of their project cycles are consistent to the analytical framework. And the CTCN and GCF are taking strong gender responsive approaches to their project implementation. And I already explained some points to be concerned for the CTCN and the GCF. So with these analytical results, what implications can we get for Korea's renewal of global climate technology cooperation strategy? I'd like to provide you with policy implications at 2 levels. First, at the micro level, we think that we can draw out gender elements that need to be incorporated in each stage of a project cycle in Korea's new strategy. So in this first stage of identification, we need to prepare guidelines experts to undertake gender analysis and to collect and analyze sex desegregated data. In the stage of preparation, we need also guidelines and experts and funding for gender assessment and gender action plan. At the stage of approval, we need to include gender elements in project funding approval criteria in Korea support program. For the stage of implementation, capacity building activities, programs, and professional assistance need to be provided to Korean project implementers. And in the last stage of completion evaluation, we need indicators that can qualitatively and quantitatively prove that gender relations are improved. And also we need experts who can conduct project evaluation on gender. And I'd like to provide you with the policy implications also at the macro level in 4 aspects. First, we undertook this research to mainstream gendered approach in Korea's global climate technology cooperation efforts. But we think that this effort should be in the context of improving human rights in consideration of vulnerable social groups. Second, gendered approach is basically a participatory approach that concerns the needs and views of vulnerable social groups. So it is a natural corollary that participatory approach takes more time, efforts, and cost. So gendered approach is not cost efficient in terms of project implementation. However, at the same time, gendered approach is cost effective in project implementation. So when we try to mainstream gendered approach in Korea's strategy, we need to take balanced approach between cost efficiency and cost effectiveness. And third, we are trying to do gender mainstreaming in Korea's global climate technology strategy in order to increase the chance to win the international climate technology project orders. However, we have to be also purpose-driven to enhance the project effectiveness. And lastly, we would like to suggest further research topics, and they are gender mainstreaming strategies for different climate technology sectors, best practice case studies of gender perspective application of climate technologies, and the evaluation indicators for gender mainstreaming climate technology project, and etc. This concludes my presentation, and I am really appreciative for your attention to my presentation. Thank you.